So guys, welcome back. This is still Module 6. This is the Utterback reading, Innovation as a Creative Force. This whole chapter kind of focuses on electricity. And from the standpoint of innovation, it was about more than just the invention of something, more than just the commercialization of an invention, but instead how electricity functioned as a system and how the creative force of just innovation itself kind of impacted this whole industry. So this gives you an idea of where the dominant design for the electric light bulb came in. I think it was about 1893. The dominant design was established, and you can see the falling out of the rest of the vendors who didn't conform to the light bulb that Thomas Edison came up with. So again, just to kind of reiterate, when a dominant design is when we're developing up to a dominant design, the number of competing firms increases. So you've got a whole bunch of people trying all kinds of different things, and then for one reason or another, and we've discussed, sometimes it's the market, sometimes it's politics, sometimes there's laws that this one will work and that one won't. A dominant design is established, and then those that cannot conform to that dominant design fall off, and you end up with, you know, a more reasonable number of competitors in the market. So lighting innovations, what we're finding is one, in this case, outsiders were the innovators. Edison had no standing in the lighting industry. Sylvania, which also contributed in this space, was a fringe producer and moved into fluorescent lighting, but had no, real presence at the time. New radio waves were also outsiders, and LED was developed at GE, but was not really proliferated at GE, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But it's again one of those things that we go back to Christensen and we say, well, gosh, why wouldn't you do that? Well, when you see the advancement with LED, you look at the loss of revenue, and you can understand why perhaps it was not going to come. This innovation was not going to come from GE, even though it was invented there. Edison used the language of gas customers, so in order to make this more complementary, right, it's compatible with the way that the times they were using energy. So he used the piping that was already in place for gas, and used wording where people were comfortable. It wasn't this huge difference between what was there and what wasn't. Electric mains and similar meeting systems for billing. So it was something that people, we're just going to do this instead of that. It's not something gigantic and new, which of course it was, but he was smart enough to leverage language that people were comfortable with, so that compatibility feature was there and people were able to move to the new innovation. And then of course there's defensive innovation by established technology when threatened. So the gas company did come after him, but they were unsuccessful. So in 1879, Edison was a bold and courageous inventor, and then in 1889, he was a cautious and conservative defender of the status quo. So it was an interesting quote from the book that gives you an idea. So within 10 years, Edison went from being the outsider, the bold and courageous innovator, and as they worked through their process, again we have product design slowing down and process design increasing, and the case study talks about that, where they went through and found ways to mechanize the production of electric lights. And then at that point in time, he wasn't open to doing new things. He was making money. That was the whole idea. You get to that specific process, and you're no longer the fluid company that was in place 10 years prior. So even Thomas Edison ended up embracing the status quo because it was the goal of the company. But at the same time, the innovations that followed, weren't from him. So this kind of gives you just some outside of the reading innovations and the timing of them. And, you know, obviously we know from, you know, an electricity perspective, the impact of it. So the graph just shows you that when you're looking at the different types of technology, you see a couple of things. One, you see the wattage as we go down from a standard light to a halogen light to a CFL light and to the LED light. You see the required power to get to the brightness levels gets considerably less and less over time. And so that is, you know, a major innovation from the standpoint of lighting. And obviously we as consumers really appreciate that, right? An LED light, one, lasts forever, and two, is really economical. So we're saving on electricity and we're saving on maintenance and new bulbs and things like that. And so all those great innovations are things that we as consumers appreciate. And as you look at, you know, how the different types of lighting came about, you've got the different innovations. So in 1930, there was joint development by GE and Westinghouse on fluorescent lighting, but not pushed because of industry pressure. So although they developed the new type of lighting, they weren't encouraged to pursue it because it changed the billing. It changed the way that people made money. And so again, that profit formula that Christensen talked about was going to be impacted, and so that innovation wasn't going to go forward with this group. In 1962, the LED was invented by GE and Nick Holonyak, tough name to say, but it wasn't until 1972 that Monsanto actually introduces the first LED light in mass. So a different company, again, outside of the big lighting environment, was the one who did the innovation and moved it forward. In 1994, the LED was further enhanced, and in 2010, Philips introduces the first LED replacement bulb, where 50,000 light hours. And Philips is a Dutch firm. There's actually a video that's in this module that I want you guys to watch that talks about Philips, and we'll go through it in a couple minutes. And 2012, Philips Hue is born. So again, we've got a firm that is, they're now called, of course, the largest lighting company in the world, but formerly they were a large electronic company. So they weren't all about lighting. And you can see that the innovations in lighting are coming from outside of those that were part of the specific phase, the profitable big lighting companies who were threatened by these new technology forms because it impacted that profit formula again, so they weren't able to move forward with it. So again, this just kind of gives you where the innovations are coming from and the impact to the lighting industry. And that's our break for this section. We're still going to continue to talk about lighting in the next one.